Howdy all you delicious people, I'm here to review Hellraiser 2022. So, really throughout the years, through a number of different Hellraiser films, there have been a very wide variety of budgets for a Hellraiser movie, and there have really been some bad Hellraiser films also. And so I was like, okay, so whatever this is, I think I will go on and just kind of see what it's about and uh, really just see if it's like a blatant reboot or if it's just a copy and paste kind of film. And so, really, for this film, there was something visually about this movie that I really did enjoy. But this movie also didn't really give me much to invest in. We, on the kind of the hero side of things, or the good guy side of things, like any number of the actors that are to just be like carrying this film, like just seemed like they were interchangeable. Anybody could have really just been anybody. There wasn't anybody I feel that were really going through something that felt like, oh, that's the reason why that actor was casted, obviously, in this film. No, like all of them felt just like one and the same. Um, and so, like, that kind of sucked. We had the Cenobites who end up, of course, going on and ditching the leather finally, and are to give us this inside on the outside look. And I thought that was really interesting and really cool. I liked that. Uh, we are to try and introduce new Cenobites, but then we also have certain standby characters, or kind of characters that we've kind of used in the franchise and are continuing to use here. And so I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So like, it feels like a switch up, but not like a complete switch up. So I was like, okay, all right. It seems that there were more female Cenobites in this movie, as well as there being the new Cenobite called the Priest, which of course is the female equivalent of Pinhead. And a lot of people could just go on like, oh no, she was Pinhead. Like, it says in IMDb that she's the Priest. That's only what I'm going by. Is what like the name of it is. I could really like have cared less if this was to go on and be like Pinhead, the female version. Like, it didn't really matter to me. I was just like, hopefully this is a good movie, because that's all that really mattered. Uh, the thing that was to kind of get me irritated is like the build of this film, the stretching of it. And I was like, man, you really could have like cut quite a bit of this film, or like, to me, I was just like, man, this is a long movie. Like, and I'm just waiting for like the next Cenobite thing to happen, and I'm like, man, like this is taking a while to get to the next kill, the next taking of somebody, and in between those times, it's just a lot of runaround stuff that is to obviously lead nowhere, to the point to where we even get to the end of the film where it just feels like a lot of build to get nowhere. Uh, but it's all the fun of the adventure, right? It's the fun of the adventure. Uh, so yeah, so with that said, uh, I can just go on and state that, like, this Hellraiser wasn't as bad as certain other ones in the past. And so, with that said, I can go on and say that this Hellraiser movie is okay. It's okay. It's like definitely a thumbs up, a positive. Uh, I liked this movie, but also it's just like, but man, they're like, I could not go on and justify like story in this movie to be anything that uh, I liked about this film. It was all just really carried with visuals and interesting ideas that they were going with. But beyond that, like this movie had no story that I gave a rip about. So with that said, and plus also there were certain Cenobites that I was like, what is the point of having the Cenobite around? Like we have the mosaic, uh, the MASQU character that ends up kind of teaming up with the Chatterer in this film, and they're going after some character. It just feels like this was like a background Cenobite, and I was like, what was the point of this character? It feels like all the other Cenobites, they make sense for why they had them in the film, but that one Cenobite was just kind of there as a like, hey, this is a unique looking visual. And I think they just kind of like they made so many different Cenobites that they're just like, well, like since we have this one on the drawing board, we might as well just make this one. Like we'll figure out what to do with them later. So that's what they did. So with that said, right now this movie is currently available on Hulu, Hulu, and so yeah, like at least this movie was to go on and like have something like worth watching. Uh, and so with that said, I think it's about that time to just make our way into that double five time territory because I think it's about that time again to just go into, of course, spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you spoil this movie. Uh, really, like for the tee up part of this film, really anything that was to go on and explain for this movie, like felt like the teeing up. Like in all honesty, like there is not much of any story to tell. I guess I could do like a kind of quick tee up version of this film before we actually get into stories completely, because I know I kind of forgot about that. So we have a character named Riley who it seems is the need to get her life together or get it back on track. It seems that Riley is going on and using her brother Matt as a way to delay the inevitable for this girl to like not only get a job but get a good job. And so Trevor then goes on and tells Riley after their pump scene that they have together. Pump scene, what the is that? They do some bedroom business. So Riley and Trevor are to go on to go into this storage unit to find this safe, crack open the safe to go on and find, of course, the lament configuration, which then leads them to, by consistently having this thing around, start to kill off person after person after person till Riley had or has to figure out like, well, where did this cube come from originally? Who was to have this before I now do? And so they kind of tried to put the connections together, go on to try to figure out that at some point this rich guy is to have a big massive house. And so Riley is to go on and hope that at certain points when she continues to dig to find these people or to find these places, that there's going to be an answer to try to defeat this thing or try to figure out how to counter it. And by the end of the film, we are to see what exactly Riley goes on and chooses. Even though it seems that it's like when you would normally go on and have a person who discovers an item, that they would be like the focused character, but come to find out in this movie we have like two characters that are to like have their own like journey, so to speak, and they feel that they are to rightfully be the people who are to get rewarded by the end of this film. And so by the end of this movie, we have like two characters that try to go on and are to uh, see what their end journey is through this film. So being very vague, but that is what it is. So with that said, I think now I can just kind of go on and go into spoilers about this one. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Hellraiser 2022. You might have gone on and hated this film. You might have gone on and just been like, okay, like this movie is meh. Like I felt like, yeah, it was a kind of a middle of the road kind of movie for me. I could possibly get like annoyed while watching this film. But I also do think that it does have rewatchable value, simply because there was a lot of stuff where I was like, man, like, I don't know if I can go on and really go through a lot of this dialogue because it all seemed meaningless. Um, but at some point, it seems to pick up. It seems to get more interesting. So, with that said, let's go on into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you spoil this movie. So, Hulu. It's on Hulu. So check it out. I'm sure with probably a number of other like Hellraiser. I'm so sorry that I said Hellboy. Hellraiser franchisable films. There's a plethora of them. So many of them. I think I am to go on and have most of them. Like I think there was one where I was like, man, this sucked. Where I didn't go on and I didn't buy that one. I think that movie ended up getting like grossed out by it. The weird Hellraiser movie where the guy was like, and I'm probably even getting sick now just thinking about it. Like the one guy who ends up like taking the paper and eating it, I thought that was so freaking gross. I was like, like that freaking made me gag because I was like, that was freaking gross. So, but anyways, let's go on and let's go into the beginning of this. So, we have a scene where we have a woman named Serena who is talking to a guy named Lorenz, and they are kind of trading out this big briefcase of money for this box that, of course, is to have the lament configuration. So, we have a guy named Joey who goes into Vought's place, his home, his establishment. And so Joey's kind of looking around in this room. We see like in some room where like a number of people are just all like going at it. It could be a group thing, or it could just be like random people that are all taking one room and just going at it. So Joey walks on to meet with Serena, and we have Joey, who is to be the chosen one, who is to need to go on and see Vought. And so Serena ends up like going on and telling Joey where to go. So Joey then meets up with Vought after. Joey goes in this room where there seems to be certain items that he's kind of looking at, but at some point he finds the lament configuration that is to look very unusual because it's towards some stage of its evolution. And so Joey, it seems, is to be looking at this thing and it's like, oh my god, like I gotta touch this thing, I gotta move it, I gotta shift it, I gotta do all these things. And so Vaughn ends up coming in and like seeing Joey and seeing that Joey is shifting and changing this thing. And then all of a sudden he ends up getting stabbed in the hand. And so he thinks that he can kind of walk away after this. And then Vought goes on to hit this this button in this little thing that it looks like a bunch of switches that you can go on and turn off and on, which we'll see a lot more in the later part of this film when we come back to this same building later on. So Joey's realizing that he's possibly trapped in this room, and so then we all of a sudden end up getting the hooks of flying, the hooks that of course are to have chains on them, and so we consistently see Joy getting like having all these hooks just fly into him, as he of course has been chosen to be sacrificed. He's a sacrificial lamb, and so Void is to go on and now try to call for the priest to then have him go on and get his reward for killing off all these people, making all these sacrifices. And so it seems that out of all the levels of things that Voight could go on and choose from, Voight ends up choosing the power of sensation. And so, come to find out, this character is to have this kind of weird contraption like attached through his body, and this thing is kind of making like Vought just kind of this weird, bizarrish machine slash man. And so like that's what we kind of see later on in the film, because this is spoilers now, so I thought I can go on and kind of reveal that. So cue us going on to fast track to 6 years later. Oh, in the very beginning of this movie, I think in the very beginning of the film, we had this being done in like Serbia. But I guess like we didn't go on and do any other like setting changes, so I guess it really doesn't matter where any of this movie was going. But so we shifted 6 years later, and we have Riley and Trevor, who seems to be doing some bedroom pushing and pumping, if you know what I mean. And so we have Trevor that is asking Riley if she likes the speed of it all, and so on and so forth. So after it seems that they are finally to wrap up what they're doing in the room, they come out to realize that there is a number of people all waiting for them to high five them and say, "Yeah, like, did you finish?" No. We have everybody like being very awkward about them coming out of this room, and Riley is like, "Yeah, you guys heard us, didn't you?" And they're like, "Yeah, we did." So we of course now have Riley, who's like, "Ah, crap." So we have Colin, we have Matt, and we have Nora. Man, if there was ever like a hugely missed opportunity for a person, that would really just be Nora. Nora is really such a character that is just such a background character with very few characters to have in this film. But really, she brings nothing to the table. There was never one iota of something where I felt horrible for what happens to Nora at any point of this film. And I was like, what was even the point of her? Just to like give us another body here to hit the floor? Let the bodies hit the floor. Anyways, pushing on. So we turn around and we have Matt that is to be on Riley's case, because we have Matt who is to tell Riley, it's like, well, hey, like the first of the month is coming up soon. like I can't keep covering for you, da 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 da. So Riley and Matt, I think, are finally going to come to some breaking point, and so really how this just comes is we have Riley that just goes off to Trevor's place to kind of let things cool off. And Riley's like, well, yeah, like I really need to get a better job, even though I have one, like it's not good enough. So Trevor's like, well, why not just live here? And Riley's like, no. But so Trevor comes up with this idea that he, in the business that he works in, which is this kind of shipping business, there are to be these containers where it's like billionaire stuff, where some people just kind of leave things in places for really just like their house is just too big to like not have it fit into their house, but they're just like, oh no, like I'm gonna put it in this container anyways because I just have money to burn. So we have Trevor stating to Riley that there's an opportunity for Trevor and Riley to find this item that may be worth a lot of money for them to probably sell it at some pawn shop or black market it somewhere. And Riley is like, you really think that we could get away with something like that? And Trevor's like, yeah, like if anything, it'll be like whoever the owner is, like they won't even notice it's gone. So we might as well take advantage of this. And Riley's like, okay. So we have Riley that goes on to go and do this heist. And so there isn't much of security for any of these containers. So Riley and Trevor make their way in to breaking the lock into this thing, get in there, and come to find out there's just some safe in the storage unit. So it's like, okay. So Riley is telling Trevor, like, or Trevor is telling Riley, it's like, yeah, put your back into it. Come on, like, try to get this thing open. And because Trevor is just going to sit back and just watch Riley do this, because he's thinking, like, well, there's no way we're going to just get into the safe. And Riley's like, oh no, like, all we have to do is just go on and just hit it the right way, and like it'll open up. I'm like, somebody's been watching too much 7 Days to Die on YouTube. Because yeah, like in 7 Days to Die, you would have this like big massive safe, and you would just go on and clang and clang and everything, and then it just at some point just opens up after hefty amounts of banging and ends up giving you a bunch of like survival items, but it just takes a while. And it's like, oh my god, like the safes freaking suck in that game. But at some point it does go on and give you some pretty good loot. And if you have like a number of hours in game to waste, it's like, okay, let's crack open these saves because we have nothing better to do. To just kind of wait it out. But anyways, I'm getting kind of distracted. So let's get back into this. So Riley goes on and pops this thing open, wouldn't you think of it? And Riley ends up going on to find the box of which that we saw earlier with that other guy. And so we have Riley open this up, and it of course is the lament configuration. So they're looking at this and like, well, like I don't know if we can get like money for this thing, like and so Trevor's like, well, maybe I can go on and bring this to like a guy, and maybe he'll have some information about this. And so Riley takes it, And we have Riley going back to Matt's place, and when she ends up going back there, she ends up getting like another awkward situation between her, Colin, and Matt. So this finally just leads to a confrontation where Matt is asking Riley, it's like, well, hey, like, are you on drugs? Like, are you on something? And so it gets to the point where both of them are bickering back and forth to the point of Riley just finally telling Matt, it's like, why don't you just tell me to just leave, to get out of here? Because I know that you just want to do it anyways. And so finally Matt just does. And Riley's like, okay, fine. So Riley takes all of her and gets out. Colin is to tell Riley, it's like, hey, like, don't do this. Like, go back in there. Like, you'll realize that this is all just a mistake. It'll blow over. But Riley's like, no, I'm just going to get out of here. So we go on to have Riley, that is just to kind of be up by her lonesome at this one playground. And she's kind of doing this like, I want to say it's like a merry-go-round, or like a one of those kind of like things at a playground where it just kind of like has you kind of go in a circular motion, and you kind of just can lay there, or you can just kind of hold on, and at some point, the faster and faster you go, at some point you're going to fly off. You just are, no matter how well you hold on to things or whichever. At some point you're going to just start to slip because of the impact of the wind or whichever. So Riley is on this thing just kind of going round and round, and we have Riley who figures out the puzzle and is to start to adjust it. And we then have the priest that ends up showing up and saying, like, well, like, you can either sacrifice yourself or take in others. Like, it's your choice. But Riley doesn't, like, understand much of that, because she also ends up taking these, like, hallucinations, this medication, and so she naturally, like, ties it together just by, like, oh, whatever I'm seeing here is just a really bad trip. So we have Matt that tries to go on and find Riley and tries to talk to her and convinces her, like, hey, let's just kind of come back, like, everything's fine, so on and so forth. So Matt goes on to talk to Riley, and while they're talking, he all of a sudden ends up getting the puzzle, and he takes it, and he ends up getting stabbed in the hand. And so you would have thought, like, the first thing that Matt would have said is like, hey, let's go to the hospital. I'm going to probably need stitches. This is going to be crazy. But instead, Matt's like, no, I think I'll be fine. Let me just kind of wash my hand and go into this bathroom, and then we'll just kind of get out of here. This public bathroom, or this public restroom. So we have Matt go into this bathroom, and, like, it was kind of cool because when Matt goes in the bathroom, like, his reflection is kind of not moving, and I was like, okay, that's cool. But what ends up just happening is Matt is to have, like, the background of this room start to slide out, and he ends up just getting taken. Like, we don't see any Cinnabites. We're just like, what the heck? Like, I wanted to have seen, like, a hook go into this guy and him being dragged off. That would have been cool, but no. Like, we're just seeing this guy, like, I guess supposedly killed off camera. And so Riley is to hear the shout of Matt and is going to the bathroom, but she sees nothing there. Because Matt has already gotten collected, and we had, like, a sink that kind of just filled up with unusual blood and so on and so forth, and, like, the time has now passed. So we now, of course, go on and have Riley break this to Colin of what had happened to Matt, that he just disappeared. And also, we have Riley that is to talk about the puzzle box, or the lament configuration, to Trevor. And Trevor is just like, well, how about we just get rid of it then? Like, if like, it obviously might be like killing people, like, let's just get rid of it. We can just throw it out. We can just throw it out and give it to someone else, and they'll have to deal with it. And Riley's like, no, like, I don't want to do that, because like Riley wants to kind of like, she doesn't want anybody else to like fall into the wrong hands of this. And like, since she was the first one to spot this thing, she kind of feels like responsible for this cube. So Riley is to see that Trevor is to try to take this thing without talking to Riley with it. And Riley chases after Trevor and is like, well, hey, like, I obviously can't trust you with this thing because you are just going to go on and try to get rid of it. So we also had Riley that was talking to Trevor to try to figure out, like, who could that have container, like, who was the name that was to fall upon this container. And so at some point, after doing some research and figuring out, we have Riley that goes on to go to this hospital to re-meet up with Serena, who it seems is going to go through some health hardships, as she is now 6 years later to be dying in a hospital somewhere. And so we have Riley who's talking to Serena and is to talk about the configuration. I think that'll be the quickest way that I can go on and continue to just say technically a part of that name. So we have Serena who's asking the girl, it's like, well, do you have it like right here on you? And she's like, well, yeah. So Serena takes it and she wants to try to go on and like reverse the configuration of this thing, this puzzle, to see if that can go on and stop all this. And we have Serena who ends up stabbing herself while both Riley and Serena are kind of wrestling for this puzzle. And so Serena gets stabbed. And so Riley and Trevor after that are thinking like, oh my god, like, somebody probably in here is going to think that we stabbed this woman. Like, we should probably get out of here. And we have Serena that goes on to need like an oxygen mask, and then needs to have this nurse kind of like sew her up. And I was like, okay, wait a minute, like, this doesn't make sense to me. Why does this woman go from needing an oxygen mask to then ripping off the oxygen mask to then just kind of like running throughout this mental hospital? I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, did she need the oxygen mask or did she not need the oxygen mask and the oxygen tank? I was so like, wait a minute, like, we go from like two things that don't make sense to me. But so anyways, Serena is to walk away not realizing she has this mask on, and she ends up ripping the cord from the oxygen tank. So Serena's like, okay, I'm just gonna like go on and realize that these Cenobites are coming after me, because she starts to see this kind of door opening in the background, this door that I didn't think had a door, is just a wall. So we have a Cenobite that comes through, and we now go on to have Serena here just kind of going throughout this hospital trying to avoid these Cenobites. And then she realizes when she is to go on and try to go through these hallways to figure if there is a way out, she then realizes every place she is to go on and turn, there is a Cenobite there. So at some point, these Cenobites get further and further and closer to Serena, to the point of, like, we have Asphyx, who is just be effing off somewhere because of course it can't see. But we have the Weeper that grabs onto Serena, and we have the Gasp that is to go on and tell Serena, it's like, well, hey, save every breath that you are going to have for all the screaming that you're going to do when you are to be taken by us and be sent to the realm of which that we are to be in, for you to have endless torture. So we have the Gasp who takes the a pin or the nail, whichever it is, from the Weeper, and is to put it in Serena's mouth, and then like they take her. And I was like, wow, like these Cenobites have some interesting visuals. Like, it doesn't feel like the Cenobites, like in this movie, feel like there's things wasted on them. Like, I didn't really ever understand like the female Cenobite, where I was like, okay, what could she do compared to all the others? Because I felt that like the Chatterer and like the God, what was the like the other Cenobites always had like their own thing, like their own usefulness and whichever. Cause I'm trying to figure out the other Cenobite's name, but it's been so long since I've even seen the original Hellraiser and whatever, and had that all that information. The only like I remember the word Cenobite because I was like, in my brain, I remember, I think in the first original Hellraiser review, I think I was to get them confused with Deadites from Evil Dead. So, anyways, but two different things. So, because if anything, like the Deadites are to just be like zombies, but anyways. So, that's what demons, but also zombies, but still. So Serena is now dead, and like we have another person who is to be taken. So after the thing of blood is to go on and happen, Riley and Trevor just kind of throw the puzzle box into the back, I think, with this bag, and then ends up shifting and changing to be something completely different now than what it was. So, and Riley is starting to realize at some point that it's starting to change and be looking like something different every time that they are to obtain this thing. So, now that it seems that that whole thing was a bust for them to find really any answers, but they find out that this woman is working for a guy named Roland Voight. And so it's like, okay. Riley ends up going on to try to research this guy, and it seems that when she is to go on to research this guy, she finds out that this guy is to have an address, a location for them to go to. And so it's like, okay, all right, like this seems to like be like heading somewhere. This seems to be going somewhere. So and I'm trying to think, uh, like what happens to a specific character when we're going on here, because we have Riley, Trevor, Colin, and Nora all wanting to go together to all get answers, and we end up thinning the herd a little bit here. So, because come to find out, Colin is to be Matt's boyfriend. So yeah, like, uh, we're gonna really try and have Colin last for a while here. But so we have all these characters go off, and so Riley on this road trip to make their way to getting to Voight's address, we have Riley getting the priest show up to her and is to go on and tell her uh, that's like, hey, like, you should go on and like you should choose like the next person to sacrifice, or we're gonna choose for you to just go on and take you next. And plus also, uh, we have the priest who's kind of dangling this carrot over Riley's head to say like, well, hey, like, we can also like resurrect your brother and we can give you him back to you. So like, wouldn't that be great to go on and get this guy back, and like you'll be happy and so on and so forth. And Riley's like, yeah, I think that makes the most sense because out of all the people who died, like he's like the least uh of all these people that I wouldn't want to go on uh and to have had him be like uh left to have been tortured and so on and so forth. So, but when we go on and have Riley just like thinking about any possible reward that she can get uh for like solving all this, doing all this, getting all this done, we then turn around and have the priest who's like, well, hey, like, but you still need to go on and like hurry up and like choose somebody to get sacrificed next. Because we have at one point where uh, we have the puzzle piece, and this ends up getting stabbed into uh, Nora's back at one point, as Nora is to separate from the rest of the group, and she ends up going on to get the puzzle piece like put into her back, and so when they end up pulling this out of her back, she starts bleeding heavily. And I think this is right around the time when these characters are to start to run to this complex, and the priest is telling like Riley, hey, you really need to choose who the next person is going to be to sacrifice, or like I'm taking you. So we have all these characters trying to run off to get away from these Cenobites, and they end up like using this fence that has this lock on it to be like, yeah, like all we're gonna do is kind of jump over this fence, and these Cenobites are not gonna get to us. But we just have the Chatterer that goes on to break this gate, and is to kind of push it really back. And so when Trevor is to try to like push back the Chatterer goes on and bites Trevor's arm. And so we have Riley and we have Trevor like, oh my god, like who's gonna be like the one who's gonna die here? And so we but so we had Nora, who on the road trip, she was to get stabbed in the back with uh with the configuration. And so they're in the van and they're driving off, and all of a sudden the van ends up getting to be seemingly way longer. It seems like the back of the van and the front of the van are really stretching out to tell us that the Cenobites are coming for Nora. And we have our characters. We have like Colin, Matt, and Riley that are all thinking about like, well, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go to the hospital because this girl's gonna die. But come to find out, it's gonna be too late because she's gonna get collected. So Nora ends up getting a bunch of hooks into her, and we start to see that like, yeah, this girl's gonna get effed. Uh, we have the priest that goes on and takes one of her pins and jabs it into this girl's neck, I believe, and is to tell her it's like, well, hey, you're gonna get a lot more pain than that where you're going. And Riley is to kind of look in the rearview mirror what's going on with Nora and realizing that this girl even exists, because heaven forbid, like for most of this movie, we even realize that this character honestly exists in this film. So the characters realize what's going on with Nora, but it's far too late. Nora's going to get taken. So then we have our three characters who are going on and realizing that both Colin and Trevor are going to be next, if not Riley. But when really thinking about it, this has to be the traditional horror film that always has to focus on one female, and the one female is going to go on and be a big, massive focus through a lot of this film. Because traditional horror movie, like, we can't go on and have like a female lead, because why would that ever happen? Because we have to have the same kind of beats, and that's completely okay. I'm like, I could care less who ends up being the hero or the villain side. It's just give me a good story. So we're having our characters run off. They end up getting stuck into the gate. Chatter ends up biting off a part of uh, Trevor's arm. So getting back to that same moment, because I feel I had to backpedal because I had to talk about Nora's death, because I don't remember Nora being in this scene, so she had to have died earlier. So in that, of course, is when, like, I think when we are doing the whole Nora thing, that's when we see the Chatterer for the first time, and we see the mask, the Masque character, and then we end up seeing him again later, but again it was another just like, what is the point of that character? What is the point of him? I don't get the point. Like, he doesn't do anything here. There's no heavy lifting that this character does besides it's like, hey, I'm in the scene, I'm gonna F off now, see you later, bye. I spent how long in the makeup chair just to do nothing in this film? Great, right? So yeah, so we go on to, of course, figure it out that Riley, after being stuck behind this gate, can go on and stab into the Chatterer, and now we are forced to have the priest realize that she needs to go on and kill off the Chatterer. That this thing is to have to get wiped out and be sacrificed, because this is to be another sacrifice. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute, like this priest is to go on and like sacrifice her own character? That's cool. I liked that. So, but we then still have the priest is like, well, yeah, but like we're like, I'm still coming for you. You still have one more left. So Riley and Trevor run off to go to, of course, uh, Voight's uh, Voight's compound. Here's the thing though, I'm so confused because there are times when I want to add Nora into the scene, and then there's times where I don't want to add her in. Maybe the whole like cage thing ended up happening way later than I thought it was, but I remember the scene, so I thought I would just get it out of here. But like, because I remember Nora getting to the complex, I remember her getting to the to Voight's place, and she was to like share some alcohol with Trevor. She ends up getting locked into uh, the one secret passaged room, and that, of course, is to be where she ends up getting stabbed with the puzzle box because she's by herself, and then they end up finding her body, and like she's still alive at that point, and they kind of rush to go to the hospital afterwards because they realize that they just kind of pulled this thing out of this girl and now she's bleeding. So I think that's where we can go on and kind of continue our journey here to get back on track. So we have at some point find out when like these characters continue to go on and separate. We start to find out that Trevor has had an agenda this whole entire time, because finally we have Voight, who's kind of lurking in the shadows, and he has this big metal thing inside the front and the back of him that is consistently like going on this like system of just shifting around like this guy's body parts and pieces and whatever. And so Voight grabs Trevor, and Voight has been paying Trevor this whole entire time to bang Riley, evidently, but to also have Trevor get Riley and all of these characters to get to Voight so they can kind of finish this all up. And we have Voight, who is to kind of tell Trevor, it's like, well, it seems that this girl is getting really ahead of you. She's smarter than you think she is. And Trevor's like, well, yeah, but like this is to all work out in the end. And like it still gets us to this same point still, that it's like she meets up with you and this all works out, but it just like is to possibly like work out faster than we are to think. So we now have to go on and get to the next sacrifice. So we have at one point where Colin is to meet up with Trevor, and like the guys of course are to have like the puzzle piece. And so we have Colin that ends up getting stabbed in the chest, and so we're now thinking, I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be the next sacrifice. But Riley is to have her own plan of like, well, hey, like let's go on and let's get one of these Cenobites to come back into this complex, because they figured out how to hit one of the like the buttons upon this building to have like the whole house kind of be on lockdown and become this kind of cage like compound, to have some kind of way of the Cenobites not being able to get back into the complex. So Riley's like, well, all we have to do is flip that switch again, have one of the Cenobites kind of come in here, and then put the cage or the lockdown part back on. And so they have at some point where they just kind of wait for one of the Cenobites, and it ends up being the asphyxed Cenobite, who seem to have this like thing over their face to where they're like they're like really trying to like breathe in and get some kind of air. So we have this one coming in, and it can't see anything, so it's just kind of going on sound and whatever. So we have Riley trying to lure this thing in, and so at some point they are to try to uh, kind of close this thing in. But what ends up happening instead, as when they end up flipping the switch, the door ends up kind of like sandwiching this Cinnabite. And so they're like, well, hey, like, what should we go on and do? Like, what should we do now? Because Riley's is somehow like drop the configuration, and so it's now on the side that uh, that of course Colin is now on. So he is scrambling for it, and he's like, well, "Where is it? What is it?" And so that's of course when he then is to turn around and get stabbed, because we have some of the other Cinnabites who have also kind of made their way in here as well, because like Trevor is kind of putting all the switches and everything. So Colin, it seems, is to be the next sacrifice, but once Voight gets in here and is to tell Riley what's really going on, that Trevor has been working for him this whole entire time, and that uh, like Trevor has basically been lying to Riley, yada yada yada. So we have Riley that is to look at Trevor and just be like, well, hey man, you're gonna get sacrificed. Like, I don't care if I love you, like I can never really trust you again, because you've been lying to me the whole entire time. So Riley ends up stabbing into Trevor and having him getting taken as this last sacrifice. But it seems that Voight is to go on and seem to think that he is to also get this reward along with Riley. And so the priest is turning to Voight and saying, like, well, like, but you've already like gotten a reward. Like, you can't go on and get another after you've already, like, if anything, like they decide that they're going to have to like trade the reward. So Voight does no longer want like the sensation part of what he is to get out of this. So he's like, man, anything beyond uh like this. So we then have the realization that the priest is to think of like, oh yeah, Voight, like, we know what you want. Like, you've always been this rich guy, and so like instead of you just wanting to ever like feel anything, because you never felt anything in your whole entire life, instead like you want power, don't you? Like, you hunger for power. And so all of a sudden we then see that Voight is to ascend, and by the end of this movie we see him getting like his skin kind of peeled back, and like he's attached to this thing uh, to go on and go through this shift and this change to possibly become his own Cinnabite in the future. So this guy will, at some point, if they do a sequel, be the new Cinnabite. Possibly he'll be kind of another one of these characters. So we have Riley that is to then talk to the priest to get her reward, because it seems that she has gone on and sacrificed a number of people besides Colin. Colin, it seems, is just kind of hanging out, even though it seems like he's going to die at some point soon. And there's no rush to get him to the hospital, as Colin is to mention to Riley, yeah, I think I'm fine. Like, I think, even though I'm going to bleed to death, like, I think I'm fine. I think it's all going to work out. So Riley goes on and talks to the priest. And so we had the priest who ends up asking Riley, it's like, well, hey, like, well, what's your reward going to be? Like, you obviously deserve one, so what's going to be your reward? And so we have Riley, who's just like, you know what? I don't want a single like reward from you, because I realize that if I go on and I do all this and I jump through all these hoops to think that I'm going to get something out of this, like, all I'm going to get is like pain, and it's going to like last through like my entire life. And so the priest is just like, well, wait a minute, like, if you go on and you get like this reward, you can get anything, like, but like, you're gonna refuse all of that and just like live the rest of your life without like uh without any of the benefits of any of this, and you're just gonna go right back to your life and not get any kind of benefit. And so the priest is just like, okay, like, all right, like, I think like I can just go on and like just say that you're going to like just be in an elemental phase, uh that you're gonna just want nothing. And so we have Riley, who accepts that. And so really at the end of this, we just have it all just end finally. And so both Riley and Colin are to get into their car, drive off to hopefully, I'm assuming, get Colin to this hospital. And we then have Riley, who can accept the fact that she was to not get anything out of this by the end of it, and she could walk away just feeling okay about it. And so, yeah, so it seems that Riley is to kind of think that like maybe she's gonna take this moment and turn around and like get her life together after this, and like this is gonna be the one moment. So oh, we also had the moment when they were to like go through Voight's stuff and to see that big book of all the different phases and all the different ways that the thing looks, because it seems that Voight is to be the only one that has experienced all of the puzzle cube transformations, and is to figure out everything to have been, of course, journalized and documented and whatever. So yeah, that was the one thing that I forgot about, as well as a number of other like transitional moments. I'm sorry about like some of the stuff where I was kind of trying to fit it in, but it was in like, okay, where is this moment? But when does it happen? But that always happens at some point in some movie where like there's a scene somewhere where I'm like, where does this go? Like, where can I fit this in? Because I just want to talk about it, but then because I know if I like don't get to it, I'll completely forget about it, because that was the first thing that just kind of popped in there. So, anyways, so yeah. So other than that, hopefully I went on to say every single bit of what happens through this film. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I forgot about, because I'm sure that there probably is. There might have been like a tail end of this movie of some kind of scene somewhere. And I honestly didn't completely understand this movie either. I really didn't. But in a lot of like the Hellraiser movies, it's kind of like, what? Like I would have loved to have had like a more thorough explanation of the priest and like where they come from, because it feels like they barely just scratched the surface. And I always feel like in every one of these Hellraiser movies, like I don't get like a information download, or you just kind of have to go on and like try and get some knowledge, but I don't ever feel enough knowledge. But more than likely, people go on and be like, well, if you went on and you listened to this interview, or you watched this thing and you watched this video, maybe somebody wrote a book about this, who knows. But either way, I think at the end of the day, I'm just going to go on and just get the heck out of here. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.